Hey dudes, welcome back to another episode of our Ramos Men's Team podcast. You are about to listen to one of our prior team meetings. If you ever want to join one of our live sessions that we have every Monday and Friday, head over to Rhomas.com. That's RHOMAS.com and put your email in and we will send you a live link every time we record. We generally record on Mondays and Fridays. So if you ever want to be on the actual podcast, like we bring men up all the time to talk about their goals, talk about their obstacles, etc., head over to Ramos.com. And then also, if you want to help support the channel grow and also have access to exclusive content, book reviews, extra whiteboard sessions, etc., and some coaching sessions, head over to Patreon.com and support us. We would love it. But if not, no biggie. We'll see you on the live sessions. Later, dudes. Enjoy this podcast.
All right, we're here. We're back from a long hiatus, but we're back nonetheless. Wes, I have to ask you, are we in perfect harmony so we can achieve this mastermind?
We are in perfect harmony, my man.
Excellent. Perfect. I had to just make sure. Had to make sure our energy was aligned.
It is.
Good.
Feeling it. What's up, dude?
Not much, man. Whatchamacallit? You kind of separated a little bit due to my vacation and some stuff. So I'm doing well, man. I'm trying to get back on the horse. I was on the horse. I was ripping, dude. I had my shirt off. I was riding across the plains and I was just, getting a ton of stuff done. Then I went on vacation and came back and my whole morning was centered around me coming down to printing out my weekly goal stuff, filling it out, kind of engineering my week, which is a thing I never did, which helps me big time to actually do just the little thing of when I wake up to be what am I going to do? Rather than being I'll just automatically grab my phone, I'll mosey on downstairs. It's what do I want to get done? Even if that's just go for a walk with my family. It doesn't have to be a work thing all the time.
Yep.
But just not being in that kind of autopilot mode. So I've been having that, being fixed into that sheet of paper with all the stuff that I need to do. I just go, okay, the first thing I need to do is go down to that sheet of paper. So it's just a really easy task. And then I go, oh, here's all the stuff. That way I'm organized via the things that I consciously set out to do rather than just kind of my more impulsive, lazy, stupid side.
Yep. No, absolutely. Do you carry that sheet of paper with you?
No, I got to start doing that.
Yeah, it's one thing that was a game changer for me. It was actually physically writing it down. And then, I would put it in the computer and then I would print it out and then I would fold it up and put it in my pocket if I ever left my desk.
That's a good idea. I got to start doing that. I didn't even think about that. Because that's the other thing too. Once I leave my desk, I'm in the wild. And I'm subject
I know that. Yep.
I'm subject to my phone and all the trappings that it holds, dude. I hate it.
Yeah. Hey, so you're saying that you have a little trouble getting back on the horse now that you're back from vacation?
Yeah, I was. I was having a little bit of difficulty, but again, once I sat down and kind of organized the the stuff that I needed, and I also had a bunch of tasks that I didn't want to do. I had a bunch of t-shirt stuff that is just I love selling t-shirts. It's just there's a very boring administrative side to that I was very I'm talking, and it wasn't even just that. It was the confusion of people inquiring about shirts spread across multiple platforms. I was a bit of a bad boy. I didn't track that as well as I could. So I had to go through all these messages from different platforms and try to see which, just whatever, spare you the details. But it was something I wasn't looking forward to doing. And for that reason, I was but then, I got home and actually handled that first, which was I've been trying to do the things I feel like doing least first.
And they say eat your frog first.
Yeah, that was my frog. So I ate that. Yep. And we're all up to speed on t-shirts. That was a kind of a nightmare, man, of sending a bunch of t-shirts out, not knowing who got what and who didn't. Because the person who was fulfilling them at first, was just clicking fulfilled on some of them and they actually weren't. And, that opens you up to anyone being well, I didn't get mine either. And you're how do I know?
Yeah.
But either way, so yeah, I fell off the horse, man. I was trying to, and it's not like I said, I try to get out of the just work mentality because that's a whole problem in itself.
Yep.
So it's how do I have my work schedule be harmonious with in my case, my family environment, so that I'm not just down the basement being leave me alone, and everyone's all in disarray because that's pointless. There's no point of working to have a house in chaos. So it's that's step one. I've been getting everyone back in sync with my work day, making sure, my wife's cool. I'm not just kind of hanging her out to dry. So I'm down working all day and she's just doing baby stuff all day. So it's been a process, but it's been going pretty well. I think I'm getting back on.
That's why I like the terminology from yoga, how they call it a practice. And regardless of whether or not somebody likes yoga, that we can take some of those benefits. So they call it a practice, and the fact that you're not going to get it perfect repeatedly, basically for your entire life, is awesome. And it's the reason for falling down is so that you can lift it back up. It's in that repetition that really builds the muscle. So yeah, I think it's great that you're sharing. It's like, we've all experienced that, where you've maybe nailed a certain schedule for a certain period of time, and then you go off on vacation or you have a holiday, whatever it is, the weekend, etc., breaks that habit. And then it's the rep is getting back on that habit loop. And yeah, that can be tough sometimes, man, especially when your life's at a level where you have to manage multiple stakeholders, stakeholder of a family, stakeholder of a business, stakeholder of your audience, your friends, etc. I mean, so it's awesome you're sharing those details, because yeah, that's, for the listeners out there, I say that's probably the hardest part of the game, is once you've stopped momentum or broken momentum, how do you get back? Because it's a whole psychological shift, because you start beating yourself up. It's like, oh, well, I've already been off it for a week or 2 weeks or a couple months, whatever it is, and now I've got to make up all that ground. It's like, just stop all the nonsense talk in your head and just like restart, just get back on the horse. And then 3 days later, you'll find that's like, oh, I actually maintained a lot of the muscle that I had, whether it be physical muscle or skill set, etc.
No, dude, that's like the biggest thing. I've been doing a lot of like mindfulness practice and doing stuff like that. And it's very the same thing. It's like you're definitely not going to get this perfect at all, ever, really, for any extended period of time. But the idea is what you're saying, and kind of what I'm saying is like, you get into these kind of like negative spirals of like I'll get back and I'm like, oh, I just lost it. I'm back to my usual disorganized, chaotic self, and I'm not going to get anything done. In your mind, you're living in a projection of like, this will just be the way it is forever. And then like,
Yep.
that's how you're experiencing it. Then you just simply sit down and like, all right, let me write this stuff down. Then you do the thing. So there's like the thought of the thing, which can span into infinity in your mind. And then there's just simply the action, which is like, well, despite that, I'll sit down and just start to at least write out what I think I want to do with my week. And then like 30 seconds into that, you feel immensely better and you're like, oh, cool. That's great. So it's like that kind of mental kind of game you play with yourself seems so much larger than it is, and you can't really think your way out of that. You have to do things. And then that kind of just melts away, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because the very thing that you are trying to analyze with is kind of drunk with negativity, right? The brain that you're trying to analyze your progress or your projected progress is also bathing itself in some sort of negative speak. So it's very hard. You just have to trust the process and say, brain, thank you for sharing, but I'm going to go to the gym today, or I'm going to do my work today. And then I'm going to reserve my judgment for 3 days from now or for tomorrow, because it's a different person when you've executed on your task list, or at least to a certain degree. You're a different person after you finished than you were prior.
Yeah, man. And dude, and I can't agree more. And the thing is like, because there's like, the sitting down, the getting everything done, and that's doable. But then it's like, how do you do that in a way where, again, in my experience, because I have a family, it's like, how do I do that to where like everyone else is cool, everyone else is on the same page, and we're all good. And a lot of that was like, so I'm at like a crossroads, I'm not like right now, but I was, where it's like, I can just be like, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to get this stuff done. If you don't like it, tough. Or I think do the kind of harder thing, which is like, well, what would be ideal for you? Presenting my case, hearing their case, and be like, all right, so here's what we need to do. And then coming up, like, again, I just use the stuff you gave me, which is like focused work blocks of just like no distractions, no like, well, I'm going to kind of talk to this person, listen to this thing. I'm like, can I have 2 hours? I'm going to work for 2 hours. Please don't disturb me. I get so much stuff done. I've been doing 2 of those blocks a day. I'm getting so much stuff done.
Oh yeah.
So,
and are your time blocks, are they 2 hours a piece?
yeah.
Oh, it's amazing what you can accomplish in 4 hours of focused work effort.
Mm-hmm.
So two blocks a piece, 2 hours, or 2 blocks per day, 2 hours per block.
Yeah. And the cool thing is too, when I'm not doing those, was before I was in a suspended state of like kind of thinking I'm not doing enough while actually not really doing enough, but I'm kind of working, kind of not working all day long, which is a kind of miserable state to be in. So now, like, I'll be like kind of doing a little work, run upstairs, do some stuff with Maya, with my baby, and then like kind of be like, I gotta get back down. Now it's like, you know, and this all came from, what's funny is it all comes from a conversation. It's like, you know, I can sit in my head and be like, well, maybe if I do this and do that, but in reality, I had to have like a very, you know, structured conversation with my wife and be like, this is what I need. Actually hear what her, you know, objections were, rather than being like, oh my God, shut up, blah.
Yep.
Actually hear her objections and go, okay, take what I was like, you know, that's kind of valid. And then just kind of be like, but here's my situation. And then they go, oh, okay, I actually understand it, because you're actually hearing them. Everything's back into harmony. It's just, it's so funny how fast that can spiral out of control. You know,
Oh yeah.
not like we're like burning the house down, but it's still like the mood changes and everything gets off. And like, dude, that 1 degree will throw you off for the whole day. And it's, you know, it's kind of important not to be in that.
Oh, if not the whole week, if not the whole month, if not the whole year. I mean,
Yeah.
and then in perpetuity. I mean, really. So once you kind of start to analyze these types of things and zoom in on human communication, because it's abstract, it's kind of difficult. But once you develop an eye for that, you can start to see the chaos really growing. You know, just really, really growing. Like I've got a friend, and he's got roommates, and they're in a constant like passive aggressive state of I'm going to take out the trash. I'm not going to take out the trash because he didn't take out the trash, or like all of these little things. And it's like, that is chaos starting. And then all of a sudden, you know, somebody's using the washer a little too much, and or not taking their clothes out. And it's like all of those little things that maybe most people would say, oh, you're just being nitpicky. It's like, no, these things need to be communicated and fixed, because they're just little examples of chaos. And then all of a sudden that can explode into mayhem. And I know that for sure, because I can say that one of my family members, here's kind of a better example. One of my family members, unfortunately, my uncle had passed away, or one of my uncles had passed away, and he was kind of a stricter type of dude. And now his wife, she's still, my aunt is still alive, but she now has 2 family members living with her, and it's insane the amount of chaos that now that household contains. Right, like dog peeing all over, like new dog, right, not trained, peeing all over the house, right, bills not being paid, you know, cleanliness is not you know, level 10 where it should be, like all of these things, now to the point where certain family members are no longer visiting that household because of all of this chaos. Like that's chaos. That's an example of, if you don't pay attention to the daily fixes, then all of a sudden you have these catastrophes. And I would say, from a family perspective, it is a catastrophe if other family members are not going to visit you because they don't like the environment that they're going into. That's a very heavy price to pay, right? So it's like, pay attention to those small forms of chaos, and especially in nuances, like Matt is saying, in human communication. Like as a man, you have to fix those. You have to be willing to confront issues and be comfortable with that confrontation, and fix it when it's a young monster, not a large monster.
Yeah, man. And that's the thing, like, you know, looking back on, I was very, very passive on a lot of things like that before, where like, you know, things would pop up and I would just be kind of like, whatever, you know, because it's like, especially when you're not really kind of present, you know, I spend a lot of time in my head, I feel like. So like when you're not really present, it's easier to kind of like dodge between all those, like you were saying, like a dog's peeing all over the place and doing stuff, people aren't coming by, you're like, whatever, you know, because you're so much in your head, it's like whatever. But once you kind of like, you know, pop out of your little shell and you're like present in the moment when you're dealing with people, it becomes very apparent when things are, they get off, and it's like you have a choice whether you want to go just address that, or, you know, sometimes give it a little time and then address it. But like, dude, I still let things slide, and I can say from experience, like it always ends up bad. It always ends up
Yep.
like a huge insurmountable problem that you're just like, man, I wish I addressed this before.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. And while we're on that topic, I need to call myself out, because when you and I record this, dude, I've been late like the last like 5 times. Like that is completely, you know, like what the fuck am I doing? Like what, like, so I need to, you know, announce that now. It's like, that's a little bit of chaos that I need to get back on my shit. Like what, there's zero reason for that. It's just lack of discipline. So I'm going to make a commitment to be here on time. Of course I might fuck it up again, but I need to acknowledge that and then figure out how to fix that. Actually, I know how to fix that. It's like, get to bed earlier. That's how you fix that.
Yeah, dude. Well, so this is actually funny that you say that, because my like getting back from when I got back from vacation, I got 2 5-hour nights of sleep, and
Ooh.
it threw me into, it just threw, and it was for no, like I was going to bed on time and everything. I think it was because I was like, I started doing all these like push-up challenges, running challenges. So if I work out, if I do extreme physical activity, the way my body is, I don't know if this works for everybody, I get wired. So like if I'm doing like super hard workouts a lot without resting, my body gets wired and I actually can't sleep. It's really weird.
Interesting.
So yeah, I had like 2 nights in a row of just like 5-hour sleep where I would just wake up at like 4 and be like, I'm wide awake. And I'd be like, I'll just go run, I guess.
Oh,
So I got in this like 2 or 3 day, just like bad sleep thing. And dude, it like, again, my productivity was all messed up. I started like kind of bickering a little more. And I was able within that to go, I need to get my sleep right. And I but I got to get all this other stuff done. I got to do this. You're falling behind a little thing that, and I was, to be able to be like, that stuff will be fine. All I need to do right now, step one above everything else is sleep. And it was, it just kind of set everything right, which is really
Sleep's
weird.
number one, bro.
It's just so funny to think. And it sounds like I can see people saying like, oh yeah, whatever. I know I sleep, whatever. But it's like, yeah, we all sleep obviously, but it's like putting that central, and I still to this day struggle with this, but putting that as a central thing of your day where like, your end of your day, there's a purpose to be, everyone talks about like, go out and get it and do this and wake up and drink your coffee and, listen to this thing and do everything. But it's like, dude, the wind down is, I think, just important, if not more, of like having that second half of your day. That's just like the wind down, the relaxation, everything's done. The phone's away, emails are done. This is pure relaxation time. And then people are, I can't afford to do that. And it's like, okay, I think there's always ways to kind of do it, but whatever. But I think there are little creative steps, even just tiny little mini steps you can take, even if it's 5 minutes, dude. 5 minutes of wind
little sleep
down
ritual.
Time. Yeah, exactly. It's like, dude, just really putting as much purpose into the second half of your relaxed day, whether that's like just the family time, the dinner, whatever, putting as much purpose and kind of energy in, so to speak, into that as you do, like with the stuff you're trying to do and stuff you're trying to get done.
Yeah, well, I think sleep gets a bad rap because we often mistake activity for progress. And because of that flaw in logic, we say, okay, well, activity. And then sleep seems like the exact opposite of activity. So because it's a really easy target. It's like, oh, sleep, you're doing nothing. And in reality, if you ever read some sleep books, which I've read, I think like 3 or 4 at this point, and they're all phenomenal. So all of them say there's a massive amount of activity that's going on physiologically and biologically when you are sleeping. In my opinion, it's the number one thing to do, right? That sets the tone for everything else that follows it the next day. So that's why when people ask me, I say, if you want to start really hitting your goals start the night before with getting to bed on time, like 100%. And to those people, because I used to be one of these people when I worked in New York, it was a badge of honor to not get sleep. We always, I got 4 hours sleep and blah, blah, blah. And, you kind of wear it as like a badge of pride because it uses some sort of like mile marker for how hard you're working. I'm working so hard, I can only get 4 hours sleep. That's the implied message, which is complete bullshit. But so here's the thing that changed. One of the things that changed my perspective on it. Jeff Bezos, who is the founder and current CEO of Amazon, in an article said that he makes sure he gets 8 hours of sleep a night. So if Jeff Bezos can get 8 hours of sleep per night, and he's running arguably one of the largest companies in the world and one of the richest men in the world, then you and I can get 8 hours of fucking sleep, right? This is not hard math. Like if he can do it, we can definitely do it, right? If you're gonna select a busier, there's probably no busier person on this earth, right, than him, or who at least has as many options as him, and he still chooses to get 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah, what do you think he does every day?
Well, so interesting enough, he says he gets 8 hours of sleep every night. He does not make any decisions before 10 a.m. and he does not make any major decisions after, I think, 3 p.m. Like so this guy, because yeah,
that's awesome, man.
That's well, the cool thing is we have a lot of CEOs now, Fortune 500 CEOs that are creating these extremely large, successful companies, but they are computer scientists. So they're incredibly rational. So if you look at somebody like, Jeff Bezos is a perfect example from Amazon, Elon Musk from Tesla, and Mark Benioff from Salesforce. These guys are titans, right? But they are extremely rational. So they're not into necessarily the marketing of it as much as they are into like the engineering of the company, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and because of that, we now have, Mark Zuckerberg is another example. founder and CEO of Facebook. So you don't have as much bravado in I would say the new age CEOs. So they're actually teaching a lot about, in my opinion, about fundamentals, right? Of this Venn diagram of how we should live, and you can build a great organization at the same time. Versus in the past, it was just you had to give this persona of being Superman, right? Or this persona of like all of this like sort of flamboyant, marketing and all this, when in reality, it's like, no, just create great products and then do what you're supposed to do as a human. That's why you see like a lot of this leadership, especially out of Silicon Valley, the way they're leading their people. Like if you look at COVID, like a lot of companies, the Facebooks of the world, they released their employees months and months and months ago to work from home. Mm-hmm. Right. Versus the companies in the past would not have had that perspective, but they took very rational steps, and they're still taking very rational steps to bring people back in. Like I think for the most part, these companies are not bringing anybody in for the next 6 months. I think for the entire, the rest of the year, at least. So it's just very interesting to see that it doesn't have to be you just work yourself to the bone. You only get 2-3 hours of sleep, and you pound your chest and say, well, that's what Arnold Schwarzenegger told me to do. He said, figure out how to sleep faster. It's like, no, maybe that's just wrong. Maybe he was just saying that because it sounded really good in a speech. Maybe that's the case.
What does that even mean?
He's just trying to make a joke. In one of his famous commencement speeches, he said, sleep 6 hours a night. And if you sleep 8, just figure out how to sleep faster. Like just meaning sleep less. Right.
Yeah.
But that's that bravado that comes along with it. It's like, no. Like there's a lot of science that shows that is actually terrible for you. Like it's absolutely terrible for you.
It's also like, if you don't believe in the power of sleep, it's like, all right, well, just when you go to bed, do your thing, but just charge your iPhone like 50% of the time you would charge it. Start your day with a 40% on an iPhone. People will be like, oh my God, I have 48%. It's 8 a.m. I don't know what I'm going to do. It's like, think about your body, man. Like, we're worried about like more dutiful about charging their iPhones. It's like, imagine if you just didn't charge your iPhone for 3 days. You're just walking around talking on a dead iPhone. People are like, what are you doing? You're like, I'm grinding. It's like your iPhone's dead. And you're like,
yeah,
doesn't stop me.
It's exactly right. Like that's why we say on here, it's like, you got to treat yourself. You got to treat life like an athlete treats a sport, right? Because sports make things very concrete. So you would never, LeBron James spends a lot of time in recovery, right? You would never have an athlete, a superior athlete, who doesn't spend time in recovery. That just doesn't happen, right? Ice baths, proper nutrition, proper rest, proper sleep, proper stretching. And so I think when Phil Jackson became the head coach of the Lakers, he brought in a yoga instructor, and they started doing yoga pretty consistently. And for that, the year that they started that, they had the least amount of injuries on the LA Lakers in history. And that's an example of like, oh, you do need to have certain recovery types of practices. The world is getting smarter in this arena. So I guess what we're trying to say is make sure you get your damn rest and recovery and have rituals around that so you actually do it.
And dude, it just makes, again, I'm going to juxtapose my kind of previous modes of existence, where the one was kind of like a disorganized, yet kind of energetic push towards some vague idea of things that I kind of have to do that would kind of scatter here and there. And which was chaotic, difficult, and caused tons of relational problems. And then it's like, I have my organized perspective, which is like, I know exactly what I want to do for the day for the most part. It can fluctuate here and there. I'm not like totally freaked out about having to move things around or whatever. Or if something just can't get done in the day, I don't really beat myself up about it. But it's like, I know exactly what I want to do. So when I, say I'm talking to my wife, like I need time to work, I can be like, this is exactly what I have to do. And it's a much more compelling case when you hit them with a specific thing you're doing, rather than like, I got to work. And then you go downstairs and like watch YouTube videos for 2 hours and never really get into it. So it's like, out of the two modes of existence, I can say I'm vastly more content. And I'm not even going to say happier. Happier, yes, but it's like more content and fulfilled by organizing my day properly and giving form to my day, which I think, and this might be a stretch, but I think, that was the way of the modern era of like 1950s and people drinking their milk and going to the factory and, blah, blah, blah. And then I think around the 60s, it was like, nah, man, like just like your day should be this like wild flowing state. And it's like, there is room for that too. But I think people got kind of sold this idea that like forming your day and grounding your day in these kind of like, say they're rituals or whatever, or even assigning meaning, being like, I'm eating dinner with my family right now, rather than just being like, you know, 2 dinner trays in front of a TV while you're just like shoving slop in your mouth before you can bust out your phone and ignore each
Yep.
other, rather than like, let's schedule some time and be together as a family. And like, it doesn't really get done anymore. And it sounds silly almost, but it's like, I think that's to our detriment.
Yeah, well, I think being very intentional about everything that's important, and then being really strict about, not doing things that are not important is more than essential. I mean, that's the cornerstone of progress. I mean, it really is, like, being intentional about how you want to build your life, and the building blocks of life come down to the day, right? It's just stringing a bunch of days together, right? That eventually create your life. So yeah, no, I completely agree. And cornerstone things of maybe things that we took for granted when we were kids, like, oh, why do I have to sit down to dinner, or like every Sunday night, like, why do I have to have family dinner? It's like, now you get a little older, like, oh, that's why it's important, right? Like, we have to have a nucleus to this family, and we need to have certain rituals around this family, and that's why.
Yeah, it's really, we have to have a mass agreement that, you know, there's a million things to do in a day, but by all showing up and sitting down at the same time, we're all implicitly saying like being together is one of those top, if not the most top priorities, rather than
Yeah.
everyone kind of getting scattered into their own thing and kind of just losing contact and drifting apart.
So when you say that you were having, you went on vacation and then you come back, and there's a little bit of friction of getting back, what was that like? And then did you experience any tricks that got you back faster than maybe in the past?
Yeah, so the friction, it was twofold. The friction was myself kind of getting I fell right back into like waking up, popping out my phone. That was step one. Waking up,
Mm,
popping out my phone. And I, for good reason, I can think, well, I got to check my work email. I have to do this. I got to check my workout app. Blah, 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 blah. So I kind of fell into that, and that would spill into a state where I then, you know, this is just my personal day. I don't know if it applies to anyone else. I wake up, and then there was a lack of structure where like my wife needs to sleep. So her sleep schedule is like, you know, maybe 8:30, maybe 9, maybe 9:30.
mm,
And I was in a, precarious situation where I had to be like, look, you know, because she's breastfeeding Maya sometimes at night, and she's
mm,
tired. So it's like, you know, you don't want to be like, get up. I don't want to shake her and be like, get up. I got to start my day. So, you know, you're kind of there. But I also, I can't have every day where it's like, well, I'll just kind of wait till she wakes up and then I'll see how she's feeling. And then we'll start. And it
right.
just, it sets me off. Once I get kind of adrift in like an untethered day, I'm off to the races in terms of just like not doing, or just like failing at the day, if that makes sense. If
Right.
I don't
Oh
start the
yeah.
day, my day kind of drifts away. Next thing I know, it's 12 and I'm already like, I didn't get anything done. It's 12. So it all kind of revolved around figuring out how to have basically a conversation about being like, look, my day depends on your day. So like if if I'm to be on a schedule, I need you to be on some form of schedule. And I'm also very empathetic about the fact that, you know, you're waking up with her at night. Like I can take one of those shifts. We have bottles, you know, so we had a whole long conversation. We agreed upon time. And we also start the day now with, it's not just like run down and go to work. If I'm able to, for the most part, we'll just kind of all go take a walk to start. You know, I had this stuff in place before, but
Mm,
it just kind of disintegrates. It falls apart, and you have to kind of try to put it back together. So,
yep.
you know, it's like having that conversation really helped. And also, again, doing all the mindfulness stuff I've been doing is just like, you know, even say I'm hearing some stuff that I don't want to hear particularly, that might, you know, maybe it's about myself, maybe it's about whatever. And I can feel myself start to close off where I'm just kind of like,
Mm,
no, you're wrong. And I'll then, you know, from this close off position, like I have to win this stupid argument. And I've
right.
been able to stop doing that in the moment and being like, okay, I could kind of see that and just kind of like, you know, going forward. So that was kind of the 2-part thing of like having a conversation, being like, look, I know it's hard. I know it's difficult, but you do, at the end of the day, it is hard, but you still have to get on a schedule. And, you know, it's a hard thing to tell a newly nursing mother, you know, where you're trying to escape the wrath.
Oh yeah. Well, is there an opportunity for a window of time? Like, here's the time that would be great for you to wake up, or that you've woken the earliest you've woken up, and here's the latest. So instead of that, can we have it to be, and you can wake up anywhere from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. somewhere? Is there a window
So
that could be useful?
here's, you know, I'm a bit of a devil. So here was my trick. I'm like, look, if she gets up before 6 a.m. or, you know, anytime 6 till 9, I got her. Because she wakes up around like 8 now, 8, 7:38. So what I do is I say, look, I'll take her for till 9 p.m. I'll let you sleep in till 9. You know, that way, like, meaning like I'll take her. And then that way you get to sleep so you don't get disturbed. But really she had 10 earlier. So I got myself an extra hour. If that
There
makes
you
sense.
go.
A little trick, but, but it works too, because it's like, dude, you got to get up, man. Like, well, I'm tired. It's like, I'm tired too. So come on, let's go. No,
Yep.
but you have to deliver. You can't deliver that message typically to women in a way that's kind of like tough shit. Because guys get the tough shit a lot, like tough shit, don't care.
Yep.
Doesn't work well with them. Being like, tough shit, I'm tired too. And they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, especially East Coast guys. I've got a lot of that in me too. I'm trying to shake it a little bit, because sometimes when we don't want to go through the linguistic gymnastics that it takes to communicate with others, it's like, look, suck it up, dude. Like, let's go.
Exactly.
And I think that's useful, right? Especially for a lot of guys. It's like, okay, cool. Like, you're sore. I don't care. Like, let's go.
Have you ever honestly told a woman to suck it up?
Yeah, no, I regret it every time. I mean,
It never works.
Sure.
Every time I've been like, tough shit. They're suck it up, dude. They don't like hearing suck it up, dude. They don't like hearing that. They don't want to suck it up.
I've tried different variations of that. I've tried one recently that I tried. What was it? It was get over it. It's like, yeah, get over it. Like, that's life. You got to grow up a little bit. And the combo of get over it and grow up a little bit, that's not a good combo. Yeah. Yeah.
No, they don't like that. They don't like that at all.
Not a fan.
Like, I'm tired, being like, okay, get to bed.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're going to be tired. I hate to break it to you. You're going to be tired until you get a nap.
Well, and I think it's tough, and I'm curious. Yeah, right. Exactly. I think when, so for instance, like, I know your work history, right? Which is, and you and I both have this. It's like, a whole bunch of physical labor jobs where you wake up, especially on the East Coast, like cold, dark, and rainy at 4 a.m. or 4:30 in the morning, whatever it is, like super early in the morning, and it's miserable. But then once you do that for so many days, right, or so many months or so many years, you kind of don't want people to tell you, right? It's hard to start to communicate with people who haven't had that, right? Because then when somebody says, you're like, hey, I'm a little tired, you're like, yeah, okay, well, how about this? For the next 5 years, go and do landscaping, go and build, dig ditches, go and rehab houses, go and do construction work, go and do all those things. And then maybe we'll have the same perspective on you sleeping in a little too long. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's tough to have that. So you're coming from two different spaces. And by the way, I'm not commenting on your wife or anything like that. I'm just saying,
dude, please.
It's got to be difficult to
get her.
No. Like, I've experienced that myself,
Yeah.
Like in the work environment where somebody says, oh, this project is hard. It's like, dude, none of the shit we do is hard.
Yeah.
Where like I manage investments. I get to manage investments inside of an air conditioned building every day, where I get to do what I love, work with spreadsheets, work with people that I love. It's like, this is not hard. This is not hard. Yeah. Or you got to be kidding me. I
mean, dude, there would be a great corporate retreat would be waking people up at 5:30 in the morning and then taking them to a porta potty in February in Philadelphia and having them shit in it while it's kind of still dark outside and cold. That, dude, anything people get. That was the same thing. That was the thing too, man. I remember working in an office and being like, oh, it's just air conditioning. This is air conditioning. There's nothing. This is great. I don't understand why people complain. And then I would sit, but the problem was I was doing things I didn't like. I would sit inside and make cold calls. And I was like, man, I'd rather be outside sweating. This sucks.
Yeah.
So like, but I hear what you're saying though. And I do think that's valid for people to check into being like, look, man, you have no idea how much worse it could be doing, doing what you're doing. And if you really dislike the things you're doing, like you were saying, like if a physically, non-demanding task completely drains you, you don't like doing that. Like you very much don't like doing that. So you should, maybe look around a little. Nothing personal. Just poke your head around, man. If you're getting de-energized all day, every day, that's bad.
Yeah, I would say it's not only bad for you, it's bad for society. I think it's not just our right. I think it should be our obligation to go out there and become as productive as possible. And the only way to become as productive as possible is to do something that you're inherently interested in. Yeah. It's just the game's too long, right? The game is way too long. You have to, and funny enough, like I work in investment management and we get people, we help them in retirement and companies and so on. So it's like, but at the same time, philosophically, I don't think anybody should ever retire. Like I think and that's for their benefit, not for, it's like you have to be productive to other human beings. It is ingrained in our DNA to be useful to other humans because that guarantees our survival. That is hardwiring that we are never going to change, right? In our lifetime. It's just not possible to change that. So rather than change that, you might as well go along with it. So it's like, find something that you can do for decades, for your entire life. And that is what will be fulfilling. I mean, so many happiness studies show that it's two major things that really come down to happiness: deep quality relationships, right? And then productive progress towards a meaningful existence. Like, those are the two things. Like, by far, the happiness books that I've read, those are the two variables that stick out all the time. So you might as well do that, right? Like, and like what Matt's saying, if you're doing something every day and it's exhausting to you and it's not physically demanding, right? If you're in an office and you just hate it, like, you got to figure out how to change that. Right. And
Yeah,
yes,
dude.
it is scary and it's going to take some guts to do. And you don't have to necessarily just go in and quit tomorrow, but you can start to make progress. Like, maybe start a little side business, or maybe start a part-time job somewhere, or go and freelance out somewhere and start to dip your toe in the water of other areas.
Or just start looking for another job. It's like, people are
Oh
like, I
yeah.
can't quit. It's like, just look, dude. Just take a
Yeah.
gander. Take a gander, dude.
Yep.
See what else is out there. It's like, Jesus Christ. All the time, they're like, oh yeah. I mean, if I could quit my job, obviously I would do it. It's like, I didn't say quit, man. I didn't say like, like you can just quit your job and go live in the woods. It's like, just take a peek. Take a little gander, see what's out there, man. It's like that. If you feel like your life is lacking total meaning, total purpose, it's like, well, then make that the purpose of your life, to figure out step one. What do I want to do? I think we get failed by the school system, dude, of like, in terms of it's just not customized at all. It doesn't really try to pull those things. It doesn't try to pull anything out of us and feel like, feel us out. Like, what do you, maybe now it does, hopefully, but it's like, that kind of sucks. But at the same time, it's like, well, knowing that, it's on you to figure it. It's like, yeah,
Yep.
you got screwed. Sorry. Then it was designed by people who, predated the Great Depression, who weren't even thinking about whether you were happy or not, because they're too closely tied to their survival needs. So it's like, and it's like, oh, well, they just needed mindless factory workers. Maybe that too. So it's like, okay, it's on you.
Yeah, no, I mean, two things there. Number one, Oprah had she gave a great talk about this. She said, you need to find your purpose and your passion. And if you don't know it yet or haven't found it yet, you need to spend all of your time trying to find that. And I thought that was great. It's like, yeah, if you haven't found it yet, then spend most of, if not all of your time trying to find it. That's number one. And then, yeah, if you're relying on the school system infrastructure to help you get ahead of the world, that's a flawed model. I can tell you that right now. The school system teaches you how to work their plan. It never teaches you how to create your own plan. Right? I mean, literally, the amount of people that I've talked to who are using a school structure model for their own personal progress, it's just basically not possible. I mean, the school teaches you how to remember things and how to take tests properly and so on. It doesn't tell you that when you get out in the real world, especially with your own business, you have to figure out which tests to take, right? That's a whole different thing. What game am I going to play? That right there takes years to master, right? Like, where am I going to spend my time and why? Instead of this teacher or this institution handing me those games, right? Handing me those tests, handing me these books. Like, no, when you're out in the real world and you're trying to create your own infrastructure, you have to figure out which is best to play. And it's a hard thing to do, man. It really is.
Yeah, that was the thing you're saying that really got me, was the like, where do I choose to where do I choose to focus on and actually do? And it's like, for a lot of people, that's kind of automatic. It was spoon-fed to them. Like you were saying, like, you went to college, maybe you didn't. And therefore you're like, well, since I didn't go to college, I have to do this. Or if you go to college, you're like, well, I'm going to do this. But it's like, what do you inherently like doing? And if you hate what you do all day, every day, it's like, can you at least then assign a meaning to it? Like what you do with the money or the means. Maybe you're like, I hate my job, don't really like it, it's kind of boring. But with the money, I provide for our family. And if you find enough meaning in that, maybe it makes it a little bit better. But yeah, I feel like it's, this is kind of the whole point of this podcast. Like you were saying before, we're going to try to start doing a Monday check-in and then a Friday check-in, where it's like, the whole point of this really is just to, for me personally, it just helps me to like talk to Wes, obviously, and, whoever else when we're doing this, but it's like to just try to take authorship over your own life, not in some like, like inspirational Instagram quote way, but to actually get into the nuts and bolts of the day-to-day of like, say you are listening to it, and you're like, man, fuck these guys. My day sucks. They don't understand, blah, 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 blah. It's like, I guarantee you I worked a worse job. I can guarantee you I had a shittier job and a shittier mindset than you. But it's like this now at 34, I'm starting the nuts and bolts of like, and again, I definitely took some kind of bolder steps that kind of paid off, but it was totally unorganized and whatever. And I'm not even worried about that, but it's like of just being able to call your shots, stick to it, consciously and mindfully move through your day rather than just kind of moving through these automatic kind of addicted channels of like social media. I'm gambling. Now I'm drinking. Now I'm at a job I hate, talking shit on my manager because I'm pissed off to be there. Now I'm going home and getting drunk. It's like, all right, back off that and try to figure out what actually would make you feel like you were living a meaningful existence. And then just try to piece that together day by day. It's just fun. It's fun. It opens you up to everything. It's awesome, man. So much, it's
Oh
so
yeah.
much fun in my experience, it's fun to live like that. And I feel like the majority of people I've worked with at every job, and this kind of breaks my heart, resign into this kind of like life sucks and then you die mode. And it's like, if that's your slogan, it certainly will. And yeah, we'll all certainly die. So it's like for sure. But it just, that's the kind of thing that like just being able to kind of, animate people's lives in a way where they're like, I did one little thing today. Like, dude, I used to think that I was going to get a heart attack if I did too much cardiovascular. I had a totally crazy, weird fear that I was going to suffer a heart attack. And it was like over the course of the last like couple of years, I'm now able to go and run like 3 miles without being like, I'm going to die. That was that was a pretty big transformation. And if I had just stayed in my little rut and, kind of made the proper excuses, or even this kind of gets a little bit deeper, but like accepted the normal mode of treatment for such a problem, I would have been kind of half whacked out on Xanax right now, taking my pill and being like, oh, I have this, that. And it's like, no, instead I just kind of like went head on into it. And it's like, I think that, and it's like, it's not even just me. It's like this is the distilled story of like all of the popular myths that like, if you run away, like there's no stories about people who just run away from things and complain. It's just, nobody wants to watch that. So it's like, they've been telling us like forever, like, dude, if you go head on into these things that seem larger or impossible, it might not be the thing you want or imagine to happen, but like something will happen and it's better than it would have been before. It's like, that's it. It's simple.
Yeah. I don't think it's ever, well, I think there's two things. I don't think it's ever as hard as you anticipate it, or you're never as strong in that time that you're never as strong. You're never as weak as you think you are. Right. So it's like, yeah. So let's just say you want to lose a bunch of weight. You might think that's super hard. Right. And maybe that game, that challenge is incredibly hard. Maybe even, let's say, it's harder than you thought, but you also probably underestimated how strong you are. Right. Like you probably, like when you got to that point of, let's say, running the second mile, like, yeah, maybe it was really hard, but maybe you underestimated how much fight you actually have in you, like that sort of thing. So, and Matt, one of the things I appreciate about what you're saying, you said earlier, is just get out and start it and you'll see that you're able to do it. And if you're not able to do it completely, then maybe you get like 80% of the way, but that 80% of the way or 70% of the way is dramatically better than doing zero. Because then guess what? Tomorrow, maybe you're able to do 75% or 85%. And then just keep on going. But then inevitably you're going to hit a roadblock, which is, let's say, one of those roadblocks is you went out and you ran for 6 days straight. And then all of a sudden you didn't do it for the 7th day because you went on vacation. And Matt, you were saying a couple tricks earlier to be able to get back on the horse. And I think one of the tricks that I've used to get back on the horse for that break of momentum is to go out and have a commitment. Let's just say you broke your chain of momentum for running 6 days straight, and then the 7th day you didn't do it. Well, on the 8th day, go out and do it. But I have found that putting the requirement for the minimum viable effort, right? Like, what is the minimum amount of effort that I can put in today just to check the box of like getting back started? So, okay, maybe I'm not going to run a mile. Maybe I'm going to run for 5 minutes. But dude, I swear and there's an entire book written about this called Atomic Habits, talking about oftentimes we try to set too big of goals, which I definitely believe to be true. And I think there's a lot of value to that. But sometimes psychologically, what we need is like the little micro goal. What is that little micro goal that will get us started? So if you're off track, if you just came back from vacation and you can't like get all of your stuff back up and running, it's like, okay, what's the minimum amount that I can do to check the box? And I think that's been super helpful for me every once in a while when I've broken my momentum.
Yeah, especially when you're checking boxes in territory that you've already determined is like, this is just outside of my realm. I just simply can't do it. It's like, well, think about the first practical step and just take the first very small practical step. And all of a sudden that whole, like the woods that Bilbo Baggins has to go through with the gigantic spiders, just shrinks down into like, just a field. And you're like, oh, okay. Step 2 is this, whatever. It is crazy how much our minds can, and I think it's a protective mechanism of the mind to kind of like be like, stay away from that stuff. We don't know what that is. And it'll kind of like draw it into this humongous, ornate, horrible scenario. And then you like do it and you're like, oh, that was pretty weird how easy that was.
Yep.
It's pretty, dude, it's so funny because if you were to tell me 3 years ago, like, dude, go run 3 miles, I'd be like, you don't understand. I'm at risk of a heart attack. Like, I'd be like, you don't understand.
Wait, just out of curiosity, where did that come from?
I don't know. I remember, this was a long time ago, but in college, I started getting really bad panic attacks. Came out of nowhere. I think one night I had one. Actually, I came upstairs. You gave me some tea. Thank you for that. And I started getting panic attacks, and I never went and got it treated. And I don't think that's necessary. I think you should go get help. I'm not saying like, don't get help if you have that, but like standard procedure help would be like, go to a pediatrician. He's like, oh, here's Paxil. Like this is an off-label use for that. And it doesn't really address the root cause. So I started getting panic attacks and I'm like, what the hell's going on? This sucks. I didn't even know what they were. I was just like, oh, I'm dying. Cool. And then, like, I looked into it. I talked to my mom after like a month and she was like, oh yeah, it's just anxiety. It's no big deal. So I was like, all right. So I start to kind of like, I spent like the last year and a half of college battling like severe panic attacks, just, reading about it, doing it, blah, 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 blah. And it was at its worst. It was the point where like, dude, I would like leave class. I would sit in class and like, oh shit, I'm getting one. I have to get out of here. And it was like, I just dealt with it. I just quietly kind of like very Irishly dealt with it privately.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, dude, just dealt with it. And it was just a thing in the back of my mind. I made some progress on it and they just started coming all the time. It was actually funny because I swear to God, the real not cure, but the real thing that helped was I remember I was driving one day. I was like, I feel like I'm going to get one again. I'm like, this sucks. And I remember thinking like, dude, honestly, this is so annoying. If I die right now, I wouldn't even care. And yeah. But then it just went away. I had to just be like, I might die. You know what? I might. And it was just kind of like, it just, and then I started doing all these tricks of like, just like interpreting that sensation as more of just like energy than it was like anxiety. I would just feel the sensation rather than me coding it as like, oh my God, it's anxiety. I'm bugging out. I started playing little tricks like I'm just in an energized state and this isn't necessary. I wouldn't evaluate it as a bad thing. So I played all these tricks and did all that. So in my head, I was like, bam, got anxiety beat. Hell yeah. And then I started getting like serious heart palpitations. And I was like, oh no. So and this anxiety can do this. It can morph. Like you can like, all right, I got it whipped in one form. And then it changed from like panic anxiety to just health anxiety, which I didn't know was a thing either. So then like I'd just be sitting there and my heart would be like, and do like a weird heart arrhythmia because I was like super stressed out. And then I started interpreting that as like, oh man, my heart's messed up. And then, you go to like a cardiologist and like, now your heart's fine. You're like, he doesn't know. He has no idea. Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, man. And a lot of that too, this gets into a kind of a different realm, but it's like, dude, I was completely out of touch with like my feeling state. And like, I wasn't at all kind of operating on any centralized, like overarching goal strategy. There was no values. I was just existing, letting things go, letting things build up. And like, I was in a bad marriage, all this stuff. So, as a result, I was getting heart arrhythmias, which is just a stress related phenomenon. It doesn't mean your heart's bad at all. So, long story short, I stopped exercising then. So I'm like, all right, I got the panic stuff good. I'm good. I just can't exercise, which is a miserable state for me. And then the second phase of that was like being like, look, this is bullshit. I went to another cardiologist and he was like, dude, for real, like your heart's totally fine. We did a stress test. We did every single test. And he was the first guy kind of was like, get out of here. The second guy really took me through the whole thing and was like, this is, like totally normal. I don't know what else it is, but in terms of like, you can run you could try at least to run a marathon and like you'd be fine. So I started again, just self going out to the gym, running for like you were saying, dude, 2 minutes. I would go on the treadmill for 2 minutes and get off. And then I'd go for like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And then now it's like, I'll go run 3 miles. And now it's like, I'm like, whatever, I'm over it. Fine. But yeah, dude, that was a slog, man. That was a serious slog with up against very serious perceived mental threats that like, and that's an acute version of it. But there's lesser gradients of that, every day that you can kind of encounter of like, yeah, but maybe this will happen. And you're typically wrong. The way when people don't want to realize when they evaluate things mentally, there's a huge chance that you're wrong and you have been wrong a million times. So, So yeah, that's a long story of that's a long version
No.
of it, but it's like, yeah, I'm kind of fascinated by health anxiety because people, again, a lot of people get heart arrhythmias and it just kind of goes like, it's skip my heart still will just skip a beat. Now it's just kind of like the way I'm evaluating it is like, oh, my heart's just skipping a beat rather than being like, this is a sign of impending doom. And it's, so.
So yeah, no, this is some awesome stuff because if you're going through it, other people have gone through it. I've never had anxiety attacks. Well, I had one, like I think in high school at like a prom, but outside of that, maybe I've had two in my entire life. But I want to make sure I'm hearing this properly. So one of the things you did was change the meaning. It seems like, right? So your brain was saying certain things when you were having the anxiety attacks, and you said, well, okay, fine. If I die, I die, right? So it's like almost like changing the severity of the meaning. Like I now I'm defining it as something that's more precise, and I'm okay with that consequence. And then you change the meaning again to some sort of like energetic state. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I would just, when I started getting it, I'd be like, this is just, I'm in an energized. This was like very early on of me trying to figure out how to like kind of deal with this.
Yeah.
But I would just, I'd be like, sweet, I'm in an energized state. Like my body's sending me energy, rather because it really is just adrenaline. And then your body goes, oh no, what's this? Then it becomes anxiety.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that because when I'm in yoga class, I now go like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a week. When you come out to visit, we're going to have to go to this gym and do the yoga session there. But they change the meaning to a lot of things. So, one thing that, and I'm still very much a novice at yoga, but they say one of the moves, it's like, okay, crouch down like you're trying to sit in a chair and there's no fucking chair there, right? So it's like sit in a chair. So now your legs are on fire, and it's like, okay, now pick up your right leg. So you're putting all of your weight on your damn left leg, and then it's like just stay there, right? And then like 37 minutes later, but they have you change the meaning. They're like, if you're feeling shaky right now, that's a sign of strength, and just be with it. And in my head, I'm like, bitch, I can't be with this right now. Like my leg is going to fall off, right? It's going to, my entire torso is going to fall off of the stem of my leg,
Yeah.
But part of you starts to get, it's like, oh, okay, I'm fine. I'm just going to be with it. And now I still ultimately stop, right? Like I have to like lift, stand up. God damn. But I maybe went 20% further than I would have thought it would, because even though I don't necessarily believe this woman, she is starting to change my belief system around it. It's like, okay, this is just a sensation that I'm having, and that sensation I'm just defining as like my leg's on fire. Maybe I'll consider that to be a different meaning one day, but it's chipping away at that meaning. But then the other thing I hear you saying is, eventually you came back and you made it mean different things, but then eventually you got to, what do they call it? Voluntary exposure, where like you thought you were going to have a heart attack if you ran, but then you started running and you ran for a minute, then you ran for 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, and so on. And then all of a sudden you keep on voluntarily exposing yourself to this monster. And then that monster never ends up happening or never ends up coming into existence. And all of a sudden now you're running miles a day. Is that am I hearing that properly?
Yeah. Now I'll do like a couple miles every other day. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. And that's kind of and again, if I had sought out some sort of help with not somebody who would just sort of like give you a pill and like, kind of, here you go, which wouldn't have helped anything. I just would have been in kind of like a glossed out state and been like, good, as long as I have these pills, this won't happen. And then, now I'm addicted to benzos, which probably wouldn't have been a great thing. But yeah, you can work with people who do this in just a therapeutic kind of intervention way, like non-pharmacological way, where it's like, all right, we're going to sit and we're both going to run in place and we're going to expose ourselves. They do a thing where they feed you carbon dioxide, and it quickly produces these. You will, if you've never had a panic attack before, breathe in a ton of carbon dioxide and your body will go into that state of like sweaty palms, fast heartbeat. But in a way too, it was for me, I was like, I always look back on that, those late periods of college where it was like, I thought it was a blessing, dude, to like, it kind of snapped me out of just this like automatic, kind of like, I was just out there being like just a general dickhead. So it was like, it really brought me to my knees in a way where it opened up my eyes, where I was like, oh, wow. Like, it's not all just kind of like buzzing around and, trying to get ass or whatever. Very early on, I hit like almost like an existential crisis, like super early on in a way. And that, I'm kind of grateful. I'm actually really grateful for it. But but yeah, man, the yoga stuff's cool. You get into that. And there's also like the yoga stuff, the mindfulness stuff, it all kind of overlaps. And it's really weird to think about, like, because there's trauma theory, right? That's like, cutting edge psychological science where they're like, your amygdala stores memories, and, amygdala enlarges, and it gets kind of stored in this part of your brain that it'll just kind of, it doesn't pass through really. It just gets like processed over and over. Say like you get like robbed at gunpoint, and you didn't really, it happened, it was so scary, it got stuck in your amygdala, it never kind of passed through to your hippocampus or wherever, or it could get kind of like, it's not like it's stuck in your amygdala, meaning like you're always almost kind of like nervous or kind of like on guard because you didn't process this event fully in a way. It was so huge and overwhelming, you didn't fully process it. And this is like, they have neuroscientists saying all this stuff, dude, like 5,000 years ago, that the same thing you're saying with like the Vedic and the yoga traditions, they would call it, the same thing was called a samskara. So it was an event. The idea was you're present for events or experiences, and experiences as they go on, you're in the present moment, they just pass through you constantly, good and bad. You have them, you're like, oh, wow, this sucks, or, oh, wow, this is awesome. But you don't cling on to any of it. It kind of passes through you. Sometimes the things are so overwhelming that the event doesn't actually pass through you. It gets kind of stuck inside. And then it kind of like, they're saying like it lowers your energy. It blocks your kind of energy stuff because you're not able to be in the moment as much. You're just kind of fixated on this thing. So it's like, it's just funny that like cutting edge neuroscience is just elaborating on like 5,000-year-old Vedic tradition. So it's like, people who are like, you don't need any of that science, you need all this stuff. It's like, well, that's not the case, but it's also pretty humbling for the science types to be like, yeah, this is like a 5,000-year-old idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that can explain a little more. So there's an event happens and it kind of gets stuck. Mm-hmm. And then how do you work this? So can you run through like an example of that for the listeners?
So this gets into like, for me. This is into like the chi. I always heard about like chi and all that stuff. I'm like, that sounds cool. I don't really know how to do that. But the idea is that like, you have inner energy, which is like, you could verify it through science if you wanted to. Obviously, we're burning calories, we're firing electrical signals and stuff in our brain. So that's just kind of like a flow. It's, we're here, we're doing things, we experience, say we're at work, right? And like, we're at work all day, we're present, we're doing our projects, and our boss comes and is like, yo, dude, like you're on thin ice. This last thing you did kind of sucked. I don't really know if you're really, you're up to snuff. This is a really light example. If you're really up to snuff here, and then, rather than just being like, oh, okay, like, being open to being like, well, what's going on? You're just kind of like, you instantly close up to the experience. You go in your head like, fuck this guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And you just go, okay, a nod. And then for the rest of the day, now you're at home, but you're still reliving that you're with your wife or girlfriend or whatever. You're at home, you're eating dinner, and she's trying to talk to you, but you're still reliving that conversation with your boss. Like, dude, I should have said this. That means it hasn't passed through. The experience hasn't passed through you. It's trapped in your head, and you're not able to do other things because you're reliving this thing because it hasn't just, you're not present for this other experience because you still have this other one stuck inside you, and you're replaying it and doing all this other stuff.
Interesting.
But when you're open to the experience, you could be like, hey, like, what's up? What's wrong? I thought I did a pretty good job. Well, rather than being like, meh, and then just being like, okay, sorry. And like, fucking dickhead, fuck you. Now you just set up this whole thing where you're ruminating rather than being like, well, what's the problem? And then you might've been like, well, wait, hold on. You looked at the wrong thing. Here's that actual attachment. Now you're inhabiting a world where you're like, I'm a failure. I'm doing this because you closed off to the experience rather than opening up and being like, what's your beef? Or he gave you a bunch of feedback and you're like, oh my God, I've never thought about that. Appreciate that. Two different, different interactions. And that's the idea. Like that's a very light example, but that's a samskara. That's like a thing, an experience that didn't fully pass through you, and it's trapped in you, and it blocks, it renders you less. And the idea is like, we all have thousands of these things inside of us, but they block our kind of vital state. It kind of, when we start closing off early on, especially, which we all kind of do, it kind of renders us in a state where we're not able to be present and be fully vitalized and energized.
Oh, dude, I'm so glad you went into that, because that for sure is a takeaway for me today. And I gotta ponder that, of letting experiences pass through you and being present. And then I'm also putting in that bucket mental category of like closing loops. So like you said in that, because I've got a few of them right now, it's like open loops where I've got this monologue in my head, which should be a dialogue between me and another person externally. But I'm not allowing myself to get past those because I haven't worked through it. I've, just kind of, shook my head and said, okay, that's fine. That you're saying that to me, or that you're doing that. But then in my head, I'm building up this whole story. It's like, maybe I need to close that loop and just get it done so that I can let that experience pass on.
So I'm in this position like almost monthly, and the whenever I do the same thing, I let it lie, I let it slide, I let it go, and then whenever I finally bring it up, always feel 20 pounds lighter when I have this
Mm,
conversation that I've been avoiding with that when on any plane with anyone, doesn't matter. It's like you literally feel lighter. It's pretty crazy.
yeah.
But yeah, no, it's again, there's it's a lot of that stuff gets a bad, rap because it's just like, people go, I think, all out with it. And there's a point where they're just kind of like, next thing you know, you're just like some like 50-year-old white lady wearing like a Swami head wrap, in California being like, and it's like, okay, that's cool if you do that. I'm not knocking you, but it's like things can be taken too far. But I think there is like huge practical application, and it's stuff we're not exposed to, especially in the West. It's like, the West did awesome stuff. People all say, "Oh, the West is," no, the West has done super cool stuff. But check out some of the stuff. There's the other half of the world has
Yep.
been studying totally different stuff. So like maybe check it out. They spent thousands of years. They can't be totally wrong about everything. So and it's just a totally different way of looking at stuff that I don't think we really got.
Well, I think that's one of the cool things that we can do here is that, take bits and pieces. Doesn't matter your religion, doesn't matter your belief system. It's like we can take bits and pieces from all different types of religions, all different types of mythologies, all different cultures, and then talk about them here. And pick and choose what's good and what's not, and use them for our day-to-day lives. One of the things I think is a shame in religion is saying my religion is great and yours is terrible, therefore I'm going to not listen to anything. It's like that's BS, right? Like every religion and I would say most religions and most cultures have great things that we should all be sharing. It's just like their food, right?
Yeah.
Like every culture has phenomenal food. Like there's certain phenomenal foods in every culture. It's like, let's have it all. Like as humans, we should be able to do that. We should be able to synthesize what's awesome from a certain pattern and then use it for our lives. And I hope that's to our listeners, that's what we're trying to do here. Have open discussions about these things, have discussions of progress. And then like Matt's being vulnerable about saying like, hey, I went through some shit. Right? I had anxiety attacks, like, for a long time, and here's how I worked through it, and still working through it, et cetera. So that's what this is all about, man. So I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, man. No problem. Again, it's like this stuff. I remember holding all this inside of me at like 22 and feeling like I was going to explode constantly. And as soon as it's so funny. The day I called my mommy, I was like, "Mommy, I don't feel good." Instantly felt better. And it's like, that just goes to show you I was closed up. And then I was just like, I don't come from a long heritage of like people who can emotionally share things easily. So it's like, it's kind of like, so that was like,
Yep.
being able to recognize that. And, it's just like, wow, I feel a lot better doing that. But the idea for, again, the podcast really is like, this is just, there's like, you set the goals, you set the things you want to do. Even if that's just figure out what you want to do. And then you will inevitably come up against personal and external blocks. And then, so part of it is like setting them, part of it's like dealing with the blocks when they come up so that you can kind of stay in that course, which is, again, it might start off as small, but it can grow into a thing that you ultimately feel like you're in control of. You ultimately feel like you're vitalized and energized doing. Most days, obviously every day is not going to be great, but you feel good about, the direction you're heading. And again, this will be us checking in, being like, here's what we're setting out to do Friday.
Yep.
Here's what we got done. And I would love to be able to just pull listeners, whoever's interested, to bring them into certain sessions, whether that's this one or we do them on, we can even split them up, do some free, some of them on Patreon. I don't even care, but just like really building this kind of mass around people actually shaping their lives, trying to shape their lives as much as possible in a conscious way, rather than just kind of giving in and just kind of like, eating shit at your job you hate until the new Spider-Man comes out so you can be excited for 90 minutes unless you hate it halfway through. Like, this fucking sucks. It just sucks. I've lived like that before. It blows, dude. And I'd rather people not. So
Yep. Hell yeah, man. So in true form, true spirit, what are your wins for the last week, man?
Ooh,
Or
actually,
even just since we last updated. So whatever you got, man.
no,
What's the big
the
one?
big win was the t-shirt fiasco I had going on. It's now in a working operating state. And not only did I fix the nightmare of like having it so disorganized, I had a bunch of conversations I didn't want to have, I got everything back together, everything in kind of good working order. And then now I have like 2 or 3 new designs that are coming through now that I did all that other stuff. So the t-shirts is a well-oiled machine. And that was something I was
Awesome.
like really not wanting to deal with in terms of like, because I kind of dropped the ball by hiring certain, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
Then, whatever. So that was something I didn't want to deal with. It had a ton of annoying administrative stuff. That's done. I did that. So I think that was one of my main wins. And then, with the fitness stuff, not bragging, been crushing it lately in terms of running, doing
Oh,
push-ups.
hell yeah. You have
Pretty
been.
happy about that, man. So,
Well, running and push-ups, right?
yeah.
What are some numbers around the running and push-ups that you've done?
Let me see. I'll pull it up right now. Actually, so I know I'm at, for the month of September, I'm at, I think 1,400, 15. I just did 100 this morning. So I will be at 5,000 by the end of the month, and I'm on track. If I just do 200 push-ups a day, I will have 5,000 done by the 24th. So
Awesome.
I've never done that. I've never stuck to a regiment this hard in my life. So that's been good. And the running, I think already, dude, and again, right? This is a person who could barely run, around the block without being like, dude, slow down, you're going to die. I am now at, let me see here, with my challenges, 50 mile September. I'm trying to combine scores. Del Grande. I told Del
Yeah.
Grande, I'm like, we should combine our scores to see if we can get to 50 miles, because right now it's not looking like it. But I'm on the month already, I'm basically at 7 miles. So
Awesome, man.
not bad, dude. Not bad for the old kid who thought he'd get a heart attack.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. And we're in the 10th day of the month.
Yeah.
So that's outstanding, dude.
Not bad.
Awesome job. Cool, man. And yeah, I think it's awesome for a lot of people to hear. It's like you're saying, like you used to think you were going to have a heart attack if you ran. Now you're running every day.
Yeah.
So hell yeah, man. So for the listeners who have that mental block, it's like, get out there and do it, dude. Like as corny as it sounds, like we're here to support you, and you can do it. Like 100% you can do it.
Yeah.
Or at least you can do the smallest variation of that. Just go out and do that thing and then build on top of it.
Yeah, and even a thing too of like, oh, that's corny. It's like, all right, what else are you self-evaluating? Like, what else are you evaluating that's just getting in your way? Like, well, I'm not that kind of. It's like, okay, cool. Like, what kind of dude? And how is that working for you? Honestly, like, how is that working for you?
Yep.
And if you're like, great, like, sweet, awesome, fist pump, dude, do your thing. But you know, so what have your W's been?
So I'm not sure if I shared this on the last one, but this is like, well, the first W is been going to the gym at least once a day. And I'm finding that like I'm really liking the end cap. So I go to the gym before work, before I start my day, and just do lifting, and then some sort of cardio, and then at the end of the day, been going to yoga. So I've probably been doing that, let's say 4 or 5 times a week for the last couple of weeks. And do that, like that end cap, physical in the morning and then physical at night, but especially like the release at night, yoga. Oh, dude, it's been unreal.
How you like the Shavasana?
What did you say?
The Shavasana at the end where you lay there and you just
dude,
feel so
that
good.
that and child, I think they call it like child's pose, where it's like on my knee. Oh, dude, it's unreal. And then happy baby pose.
It's happy baby. It just sucks when you're a bird. If you have too tight a gym shorts, you do happy baby. You're like, damn, everyone see my balls, basically.
Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable.
That's a big W. That's good.
Oh, those end cap, those book caps, like beginning and end. Oh man, it's just been, and I look forward to it. It's phenomenal. Diet is super on point, like eating basically like 95% vegetables. I'm still doing some meats, just to up the protein, but I feel phenomenal. And then this podcast stuff, like actually getting in the rhythm of putting them up on YouTube and learning all those nuances, like I'm loving it. Like I feel like very much a beginner and a terrible rookie again. And that's a sense of relief for me. Because in my career, like investment management, I've been doing it for so long that it's like you start to get a certain amount of skill set just by nature of doing it for so long. So it's nice to be a beginner again. So getting things up on YouTube and then like learning more about computers. I used to feel like such a an uneducated person when it came to computer talk, because I got a lot of clients who are engineers and so on. And they'll talk about computers and they'll be like, oh, I got this computer and here are all the specs on it. And I never knew what all the specs meant just because I never researched it. But now I'm learning more about computers, about GPU, CPU, storage, all of these things. So it's just a new world to me that I find very fascinating. So now the way that manifests, it's putting up things on YouTube more, and then putting things on podcasts more. So for you and I doing this, we're going to start to operationalize and systematize and make that stuff more efficient. So that's like a big win. It's kind of a nerdy win, but it's a big win for me. And then the biggest one is, as of like a week and a half ago, my partner and I, we now manage officially more than $200 million in investments. And that was like, that's been the goal I've been working for the last 6 years, 7 years. And that was like a number that now puts us at the big boy table.
So what's it feel like when you get a 7-year goal come through? That's got to be like Moses on the mountain stuff, dude. That's got to feel crazy.
Oh, dude. Well, I can tell you, I mean, for me, it was, I got like, you know, cause I saw the number, I had one of our support staff, call us and say, hey, we're a couple $100 away from 200 million. I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then 2 days later or whatever, we hit that. And I just looked at the number and to be honest, I got a little teary eyed. I'm like, fucking right, man. And then instantly, and this is probably a flaw. Instantly, I was like, okay, how do we get to 500 million? So I don't think that I'm not just saying that to sound
no, exactly. I'm laughing because I know that's exactly what you did. So it's like,
yeah, I mean, so that I probably have to, I'm going to do it this weekend. Because if I had a younger brother, or if you did this, what I would be telling you to do is like, dude, go and take some time and like actually memorialize it, like go and celebrate it and take a picture. Like that's your trophy, right? Like go and actually physically embody the experience of the reward. Because if life becomes too much about just like, oh, I checked the box, now I move on. If you don't create a space to enjoy it, that's like, what the hell is it for? So I don't want to become one of those people who just goes and checks off the boxes and reaches X, Y, and Z goals and then doesn't really get fulfilled by it, because that just doesn't, that's not rational. Like,
what's it all for? Exactly. Yeah. When you set off to do that, what was the point of doing that? Not just to do it, to what comes with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With it.
So, and then I'm super pumped because I'm going to be writing down some stuff over the weekend. My mom and grandma are coming out to visit. So I'm going to be journaling some stuff. So I'll be ready to go on our Monday meeting. But now it's like, okay, how to create the next level of success? So, or I hate that word. How do I create the next level goal? Yeah. I don't think success to me, I think
it's holistic self-enhancement. I think that's because I know what you mean. Success is a binary, like loser winner thing where it's like, I know people who kind of crush it, but are just miserable. So it's like, is that success? No. I think it's just like you were saying, like, I think you said like holistic performance, whatever. That's it for me. Again, I could be like, I'm killing it, I'm doing this, and everything upstairs, my whole family could be completely in shambles. And I, in my head, like, I'm sticking to the plan, I'm crushing all my goals. It's like, yeah, well, for what then? So I do think absolutely. It's just like you were saying, this more holistic, self-aware, context-aware, and kind of like larger picture. How do I fit into that? How do I serve that? And how do I do it in a way that makes me not feel miserable?
Yep. No, exactly. That emotional component, that last thing, that's key. That is for sure key. All right, dude. What if you can give the guys some homework? What's the homework until Monday? So that's what we're setting. Monday. It's Thursday right now. Monday, we're kicking this thing off live. So by Monday, dude, what do you want the guys to do?
I would say to set time, like you were saying, set time apart 5 minutes a day. At the start of your day, end of the day, don't really care. Although I'd prefer the start, but whatever you can fit in. 5 minutes on your phone. And when I say meditate, you don't even have to close your eyes. Just sit in a room and just look around and try not even to not think or to not evaluate stuff, but just let your mind do what it does and don't try to just change. Just sit there. Just be present. Just sit there and be present and just do that for 5 minutes and see how you feel. That's all.
Hell yeah, brother.
Try to start starting your day around some form of just like, come from yourself rather than having, phone ding, people call and pull you. Just try to move from within yourself rather than just being pulled by other people and stuff. So
I love it, man. I'm going to do that too.
Hell yeah.
All right, brother. Until next time.
All right, dude.